I think what makes it feel like it's not for the small business that we typically think about is that it indicates if you have less than 15,000 employees and you did less than 5 billion in revenue, you qualify initially. But I'm telling you, it's meant for 1 to 2 employees. The small, it's meant for real estate. You don't have very strict provisions on what you can use it for, in the sense of it's for ongoing expenses. It's not to refinance a loan. It does need to be that you are keeping your workforce on. You do have to pay it back in 5 years. But nonetheless, it's another program to take advantage of. The thing about that one is that it expires September 30. It didn't really get up and started till the end of June. And there's 75 billion available, or was funded with. And last I checked, there was still 74 billion left, only a billion, and I think around 125 loans. So you can click on the link that we'll put in here to go directly to the Federal Reserve and find a lender in your state that is taking on new customers. I know that small businesses don't like to think about taking on debt, and that is smart. But we're not in normal times. So you want to project and think ahead. Am I going to need a loan? Because here's the thing. Banks do not lend you money when you need it. I want you to think about that. Okay, I talk about it in my book here, JJ the CPA here, top 60 questions the last 27 years. You can find it on Amazon. But what I'm saying here is that when you're destitute and you have no money coming in and you're closed, the bank is not going to loan you money. I hate to say it, because their number one priority is to make sure they're going to get paid back. So you have to think ahead. It's not admitting that you're going to fail by getting a loan now. What you're indicating is that you're a smart business person that is projecting you may not be doing financially well. You're going to need to rely on a loan. So not at all am I saying get the loan and then go waste it and burn it. You can pay these back at any time. There's no payments due for 12 months, just like the EIDL. So both the EIDL and the Main Street funding program, lending program, no payments for 12 months and no prepayments to pay them back. So we know that, moving on, September 1 is when the payroll withholding deferral on employees goes in effect. We're going to need more information from the IRS on how to go about that. So I got a question on my live from Ann that talked about, or asked about, should we September 1 stop withholding payroll tax on employees? So the one thing to clarify, the only payroll tax on employees that is qualifying for this is the Social Security portion. You still have to withhold federal withholdings, you still have to withhold Medicare, and you still have to withhold any kind of state withholdings. The only thing this affects is the 6.2% rate, tax rate for Social Security that gets withheld from the employee. So yes, the executive order indicates that September 1 you can stop. Now, let's be clear. It doesn't save anything for the employer, because the employer is still paying the employee whatever their rate of pay is. What this helps is the employees, by having more of their net check, they get to take home more. Now, what we don't know is, how does the employer report this? How does the employer indicate that the employee is going to have to pay it back at some point? They have to pay it back. The employee does. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of this, because the employees are going to have to pay it back. And if somebody doesn't have withholding September 1 through the end of the year, because that's what's allowed for, and then they have to pay it back in January, that's more than a hiccup financially to that employee in January. So be aware of that. Stay tuned. I'll have more updates on that. On the unemployment, we know that the federal pandemic unemployment assistance expired July 31st. That was the $600 a week. Now, what we also know is that the federal pandemic unemployment assistance aids the state unemployment so that those that qualified could get another 13 weeks of unemployment, but that's at a fraction. So separate from that, the president signed an executive order, presidential memorandum that starts unemployment to the rate of $400. Now, the key to this is that it's $300 from the federal government, and then the president is asking the states to cover the other $100. So first, the states are indicating they don't know if they have the funds to cover that. So that's an unknown. Second, the way that the president is allocating or paying for, so to speak, the $300 a week is from FEMA. That is the federal emergency program, and that is not where unemployment typically is coming from that we know for the PUA that have been related to COVID. So in terms of how that gets paid out, how it gets allocated, what are those qualifications? So they're coming up with, do you have to show that you were actually affected by COVID, etc.? The point is none of that has actually gone into effect because of the, lack of a better word, the confusion over it. Now, where are we with the stimulus negotiations? So pretty well at a standstill. Last week, you probably know, the Democratic National Convention was going on. This week we had the Republican National Convention. So a lot of tension and a lot of effort goes into all of that. The House, the United States House, came back over the weekend. Now, I don't know if it was a vote by Zoom or a vote that required them to be back in Washington. Nonetheless, the House passed a bill to help the United States Postal Service, and it included a $25 billion allocation. It did not include anything about stimulus for anything else. The act or the bill that the House passed this last weekend did not include anything related to the $1,200 checks. So if you're hearing from any other source that $1,200 checks are coming this week or next week, it's simply not true. It's nowhere on the near horizon. So the House did pass the HEROES Act back in May. That is a $3 trillion stimulus package. The Senate introduced the HEALS Act, which did not pass in the Senate, but it's a $1 trillion stimulus package. Now, the Republicans are the ones that put together the HEALS Act. There are some Republicans not for it. Most of the Democrats are not. So the HEALS Act doesn't look super favorable right now. But the HEALS Act, in my opinion, is actually kind of the core stimulus that we're all waiting on, which is the PPP, the unemployment, and the stimulus checks. Now, when we look at the HEROES Act, it includes a lot of other things. So no political statement. It just includes another $2 trillion worth of stimulus. So the House right now doesn't want to budge because they feel all the $3 trillion needs to be provided. The Senate really hadn't got anything passed. The only thing that really seems to be on the table is the HEALS Act. Now, there is also a Restart Act that came out in June. Just chuckle because there's so many different things. I do feel like that if the Senate will get back to Washington this week, that we might have a chance of having some stimulus passed before Labor Day weekend. But note this, if the Senate doesn't come back this week, I don't see them coming back next week, August 31st, because they're already scheduled, the Senate, to come back right after Labor Day. So if they don't come back this week and we're in the next week, the Senate may say, you know what, we're all coming next week, so we'll just see you all next week. What's that mean? Most likely, no matter what, even if something is passed this week, we're not looking at any stimulus. And for those that tune in, this isn't anything new, but we're not looking at any stimulus actually hitting bank accounts before the end of August. If they can come this week, maybe there's something that starts to arrive in early September. So stay tuned for that. Now, for PPP, the forgiveness application, that time period, it's open. So check out my playlist related to that. For the self-employed, you fill out the EZ, and I've got a special playlist for the self-employed. For PPP 2.0, the biggest thing I want to make sure that you're ready for, other than are they going to do it, and I've done several videos on this, is you need to get your numbers gathered up all the way back to January 2019, and your numbers month by month. What numbers? Your gross income. Those are the numbers that you need to gather up so that you know what did you gross in January 2019 each month all the way through, and at this point I'm going to say through July 2020. If you're self-employed, get your bank statements all the way back to January 2019. Figure out what you collected. And the reason why is that for PPP, I think without a doubt, no matter what party quote unquote wins on this or how it rolls out, there is going to be a qualifier to show that you financially were affected by COVID. I think the calculation to receive PPP will be the same. It'll be based on prior payroll with a calculation. And right now I think it'll be similar, but you're gonna have to prove that you were affected by COVID. Now, right now, if you just look at the proposed HEALS Act, it's a reduction of 50% in gross receipts. What's been thrown around is maybe it only has to be a reduction of 35%. My professional opinion is that it'll be 25% based on some other proposals in the HEALS Act and looking at the HEROES Act and what some of the senators say. But regardless, you need to have your monthly gross receipts broken out. So what do you need to do now? Save. Okay, I'm not talking about the 10%, but I'm talking about saving your dollars. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe, and I'll be coming out with more updates to keep you apprised, give you my opinion on what's going on. And in the meantime, stay safe, and then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. All right, have a great one.